This is a question for David Nichols. So your explanation of how entactogens work is that they finally work through the dopamine receptors. But then what would be the difference with psychostimulants that work directly on dopamine receptors?
So it's got to be the combination. The serotonin release is important. Methamphetamine has more of a what I would call an emotional component than amphetamine because it has that methyl. So the activation of the serotonin system, that is released in other parts of the brain. So that is an important component, but it's not just serotonin release. It's got to be the other. So it's similar to psychostimulants, the psychomotor activation, euphoria, that's all got to be coming from the dopamine system. So the therapeutic effect is probably serotonin release with some dopamine release, but it's not strictly speaking just serotonin. And we did studies I can't talk about where we looked at norepinephrine, and if you block the adrenergic receptors, you can decrease the ability of MDMA to stimulate motor activity. So norepinephrine is probably important, but everyone's so tunnel focused on serotonin release that they really didn't spend time looking at these other aspects.
Yeah.
Question for Ben. If you were studying for MDMA and alcohol, might sound a bit facetious, but I was wondering if you thought that people might try MDMA for the first time in your study and just think that's way better than getting drunk, and that might sort of be part of the effect rather than it being necessarily a therapy. So they might go out and find their own MDMA.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people said, is it going to work? And even if it does work, how will it work? The question is, I don't know. There's very little anecdotal reports of MDMA helping alcoholism. Lots of reports of people using LSD and psilocybin, ketamine and ayahuasca to treat alcoholism, but no one really talks about it anecdotally, never mind experimentally. So yeah, maybe. There might be many different mechanisms by which it might work, or it might not work. I'm in quite a fortunate position to give it a go, but I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah. As the underground's got more nimble these last years, how has it affected your work knowing that everything you release is going to be immediately replicated and released?
Is this to David Nutt?
No, it's to David Nichols. I don't make drugs.
Oh, sorry.
I just study them. He makes the drugs.
The first time this came to my attention was a compound known as MTA, if you've heard about it. It was marketed in the Netherlands as tablets called flatliners, which is quite ironic. It's a very specific serotonin releasing agent that has almost no effect on dopamine. But what they saw was the fact it was so potent in our drug discrimination model in rats trained to MDMA, they thought, oh, this is like MDMA. They failed to comprehend it wasn't just a serotonin release. So it's a potent serotonin releaser. So my opinion is people would take a tablet, nothing happened, they would take another tablet, nothing would happen, took another tablet, and it's releasing massive serotonin, which causes vasoconstriction and blood vessels and all kinds of problems. But the thing that we didn't know at the time is it also inhibits monoamine oxidase A, which is the very enzyme that breaks down serotonin. So by taking these large doses of MTA, they were releasing massive amounts of serotonin, but at the same time blocking its destruction. And they had what's called a serotonin syndrome: vasoconstriction, hyperthermia, breakdown of the muscle, and then seizures and death. So the first time I saw that, I thought, oh shit. It really did bother me. And then I started seeing these come out, and there was maybe an interview with me, like, how do you feel about that? I made these for specific scientific reasons. I didn't really make them for people to try. If they were useful as therapeutic agents or whatever, that's one thing, but there was no toxicology on any of these. We didn't do any toxicology. Yeah, in the rats in this one model, they look like they might be interesting, but there's no toxicology, and that continues to be the case on most of these research chemicals. Nobody knows anything about it, so it's a giant experiment driven by a capitalist entrepreneurial motivation, I suppose. I don't really approve of that. I think it's really unethical and immoral, but it happens.
There's another hand at the back there.
My question was for Robin. When you were treating patients with depression with psilocybin, were any of them taking SSRIs or have been? And also your opinion on if they interact, because I know many people report a diminished effectiveness of psychedelics in general, and yeah, I just wanted your perspective.
Yes, it's a good question. So our depressed patients also having ongoing treatment with SSRIs, and is there an interaction? And we have had a few patients who are still on their medications, some of which are SSRIs, some of which have some direct serotonin 2A receptor antagonism properties. It's a difficult situation. We've sort of there's been a lot of sort of decision making between the team, really, of course with David, about whether to go ahead when they're on their SSRIs. We have done, and in one case the effects were significantly attenuated to the extent that the low dose of 10 milligrams didn't really have an effect. The patient was on venlafaxine, and the high dose kind of had a mild effect. Fortunately, he seems to be doing very well, but I don't think it was through his psychedelic experience in that case. Those who are on 2A, drugs that have direct 2A blocking properties, that's a more difficult situation because we know that they're going to have attenuated responses to those. So with a lot of kind of care and thought, we have asked them to come off those, but it's done in a very controlled way where the doses are lowered in a slow way with a lot of monitoring. So yes, good question.
Chap over here.
This is to Lady Amanda. What do you think about creating a museum of psychedelic art and culture in a castle somewhere in Europe?
Good idea, go ahead.
Guy with the laptop.
I wanted to invite any of the panel members to tell us their dream for, I don't know, the next 100 years in terms of psychedelic use and research.
Should we go along and do that then? Our dream in the next 100 years. Well, my dream at the moment is to get back to Bristol, having broken even on this conference.
I mean, I like the model of controlled places where people can go and have a controlled experience with psychedelics. That won't appeal to everyone in the audience, but I think that's the responsible way to go forward with psychedelics.
I founded the Hefter Institute in 1993, and we've done a successful phase 2 studies and are getting ready to approach the FDA on guidance for a phase 3 study for psilocybin in cancer-related psychosocial distress. But we've also sponsored treatment of alcoholism with psilocybin. Matt Johnson has talked about treatment of nicotine addiction with psilocybin. And I never thought this would happen in my lifetime. I used to tell people that this will happen long after I'm gone. And they said, isn't that depressing? I said, well, you have to start somewhere. But someone said, what's your dream of what it would be like in the future? And I would say, well, you're going through a midlife crisis and you talk to a therapist, he says, I think you need a psychedelic session. And he'll send you down the corner to see this physician/shaman, whatever, and you'll have a psychedelic session, kind of retweak yourself and get back on course again. So I think there are just a lot of implications, and we'll get there, and that won't happen in my lifetime, but we'll get there. These things are tremendously powerful. And we're, I think everybody here that's involved in the science will tell you, we're on the, as the Moody Blues said, on the threshold of a dream. And we're really getting there. In the next 12 months, I think if you watch, you're going to see some of the stuff published and come out. And I think there's going to be a sea change. It's, you've kind of heard it from speakers here, but we're moving in the direction of these things becoming legitimate medicine. So it's not going to be 100 years before this happens. We don't know what the evolution will be, how society will change, and what kinds of applications will happen. But the dream that many of us had for so many years, 50, 60 years for a man and I, it's going to happen. So 100 years, it won't take that long.
Yes, I completely agree. I think we've reached a certain tipping point where people are beginning to realize the value of these substances, and things can happen very quickly with the internet, and slowly the science is getting established to get good results, and I think good science is the way to break the taboo on these substances, which are potentially incredibly valuable for the individual and the society. And as far as I'm concerned, my dream is to see them where they should be and get them fully understood and tested and used where it's beneficial. And there are many areas where it is potentially beneficial. So I think we're on the right track at last, after many years.
Well, I would share all those dreams, but I would just caution you that it won't be easy. In 1642, Milton wrote a treatise on why women should have equal rights. And it wasn't fully implemented in this country till 1988. So yes, despite the fact, he was a great writer, despite the fact that many playwrights and intellectuals supported it, it took us over 200 years. And so, I think don't be complacent is what I say. We will share the dream, but we're going to have to work hard to get it, because there's going to be a lot of resistance, and it's going to come from places we don't expect. Like none of us expected the Conservatives to be in power, and none of us. Now we're all living that consequence, and please don't underestimate the fact that a lot of people out there, even though they don't say anything, they're really against this.
You should move your laboratory to the United States when they pass this bill, right?
Well,
Yeah, chap in the middle.
Professor Nutt, what advice do you have for people who aren't inside the community, who want to help turn public opinion?
Well, the first thing you should do now is you should write to your MP, and you should all write to your MP and say this psychoactive substances bill is outrageous, it's destructive, it's inhumane, it's pointless, ludicrous, as one of the Lord Winston said, it's anti-human. You should write and criticize, every one of you should write to your MPs and say, voting for this is voting for a medieval approach to science and to personal freedom. You should follow drug science, hopefully you all do, because the drug science, the charity we have has really facilitated this campaign against the bill. We've got the Royal Society, some of the Royal Societies supporting us based on our briefing documents. And you should just keep challenging any time there's anything in the media. So every time the Centre for Social Policy tells you that the Eagle Hides killed 93 people last year, you need to say, no they didn't, they killed 5. You should ring up the chat shows that are on, you should criticise them and challenge them, and stop people telling lies about drugs. So those things will help.
This is often a theme that comes up here about how do we spread this message, how do we change it, and I think we need to attack this from all angles. We need the hard science, we need the data, we need the doctors and the clinical side, we need the arts, the music, the literature, we need these conferences, we need the political angle, we need the normalization of healthy, happy, safe psychedelic drug users. People, not the generic, stereotypical psychedelic users that the media like to throw at us, people who don't look like psychedelic users saying, yes, I take LSD, it's good for me, it's good for my family, it helps me in my parenting, it helps me in my work, I'm normal. That's what we need. We need to just come out of the closet. I think that's a really important back there, but we got a few more minutes. Keep going.
This question for Professor Nutt, but I noticed you just touched on politics. And in the article in the Glasgow Herald recently, Professor Nutt spoke about things in Scotland being slightly different when it comes to maybe Scotland doing their own research, because they would be breaking the Misuse of Drugs Act, and if they did studies on cannabis and MDMA. I just wanted to hear more about that, Professor.
Well, I gave a lecture in Scotland in April. You can see it, it's on YouTube. You go to the BNA Festival in Edinburgh, and you'll see my lecture. And I gave a specific lecture trying to encourage Scotland to continue to innovate. Scotland has made progress in terms of alcohol by bringing in reduced drink driving limits and by bringing in minimum unit pricing, although they haven't achieved that yet because it's been challenged in the European Court. It just seemed to me that Scotland could go much further. Most of the substances we know in cannabis plants were just isolated and discovered in Aberdeen by the group of Pertwee. So Scotland actually has been at the forefront of cannabis research, but hasn't been able to develop it as a therapy because it subscribes to the same ridiculous drug laws as England and Wales. And I think the Scottish autonomy over their health system would allow it to actually reschedule cannabis and make Scotland the first cannabis providing state in the UK for medical use. And that would transform medical use of cannabis in Scotland. It also produces a huge boost to the Scottish economy because people go from down south and go north. So I think there are very sensible, creative ways the Scots could develop, and it would help their industry, and it would help their health service, and it would help their scientists. And as I say, the lectures on the web, on YouTube, BMA.
So, what about the consequences for your research in respect to the psychiatric drug bill?
Well, the psychiatric drug bill will stop any innovation beyond, well, it's not innovation, we're carrying on. I mean, we can carry on using illegal drugs if we get the right licenses, but it'll stop innovation across the board. And it'll stop all innovation, it'll stop. David won't be able to buy his precursors from wherever you buy them, Sigma, because they will potentially be used to make a psychoactive substance, and there's no provision for giving it to rats or humans. They just say psychoactive substances will be banned. So I worked out in my career that I published at least 7 papers using substances which will be captured under the Psychoactive Substances Act if that act were to be brought in today. So it could cover everything from amino acids through to scents, through to incense, through to research chemicals or research medicines. You know, it could potentially stop all research, and we would have to move to America. But my fear is that you might follow suit.
Yeah, don't send your bill over there because the Republicans will pass one just like it.
Precisely.
Okay, let's take one more question. In the middle there.
This is David Nichols. I wondered if you could speculate on the possibility of whether LSD metabolizes in the body into LSD, given that the subjective anecdotal reports seem virtually indistinguishable.
That's the consensus of all the scientists I know, that 1D-LSD is hydrolyzed in vivo to form LSD. And I know of laboratories where that's being tested now. They're actually looking at the formation of LSD following administration of 1P-LSD. So that's a reasonable hypothesis. Those 1-acylated indoles are chemically pretty unstable, and I'm sure there are lots of esterases and amidases in the body that would flip that off.
Okay, fabulous. I want to thank all of the panel, David Nutt and Anna Cooley.